Committee. We exist to secure two fundamental principles. First, Americans have a right to know that the money Washington takes for them is well spent. And second, Americans deserve an efficient, effective government that works for them. Our duty on the Oversight and Government Reform Committee is to protect these rights. Our solemn responsibility is to hold the government accountable to the taxpayers because taxpayers have a right to know what they get from their government. We will work tirelessly in partnership with citizen watchdogs to deliver the facts to the American people and bring genuine reform to the Federal bureaucracy. This is the mission of the Government Oversight and Reform Committee. At this point, I'd like to do my opening statement, then we'll go to Mr. Clay and his opening statement, and then on to the witnesses. Again, welcome to our first hearing on postal reform. The purpose of today's hearing is to give the people that rely on the United States Postal Service the opportunity to discuss how well the USPS is meeting their needs and to see how we can better identify reforms that could make the Postal Service a better, more efficient provider. When a business is struggling, even the most basic business course will teach you that you need to look to your customers to see what they want, what they need, and how you can serve them better. With the Postal Service losing $16 billion a year, there's no question that they're struggling. Over the last 2 years, postal reform has become a subject of great debate. In fact, in the last Congress, both this subcommittee and the full committee focused on issues dealing with postal reform. While last year's legislation was not ultimately signed into law, I believe we made great progress, and I look forward to working for my colleagues, especially those across the rotunda in the Senate, to find a solution that will put the USPS on the right track to fiscal solvency. The Postal Service's financial condition has only grown worse, and more mail has continued to seep from the system. While I'm a strong proponent of the benefits of the Internet, the loss of business-to-business email and electronic bill payments and other first-class mail is a real issue. The Postal Service must deal with these issues. There's still a need to deliver atoms, something tangible, in addition to the bits of data that the Internet delivers. Last year, there were 23 million fewer mail pieces each day, and how do we get revenue get additional revenue and right-size the Postal Service for customers' current needs? With mail volumes down more than 25% from its all-time peak, the Postal Service has been forced to default on the statutory payments to the Treasury and is rapidly facing shrinking liquidity that could lead to insolvency in the future. While pre-funding requirements are not the scope of this hearing, I'm certain we'll hear a lot about these issues in future hearings and as the debate on postal reform continues. Given the scope of the reforms we're talking about, mailers, a.k.a. customers, in
Hawaiian breeze. Your home is always ready for any surprise. Glade. Open up and invite life in. Automatically fill your home with a welcoming fragrance like Hawaiian breeze. SC.
If the customers are happy, whether they use the Postal Service for their business or personally, they'll keep coming back. Today, we'll hear from 6 people who represent broad portions of the mailing industry, including newspapers, advertisers, periodicals, packages, and others. In reading the testimony, I'm encouraged to see that there appears to be a consensus that implementing cost-cutting reforms has gone fairly well for many, and many, if not all, witnesses today broadly support the Postal Service's right-sizing efforts and are interested in the long-term best interest of the Postal Service and the mailing industry as a whole. In addition, just recently in the news, as I'm sure you heard today, the USPS Board of Governors announced their decision to reverse modified Saturday delivery, which would have saved $2 billion annually. Contrary to the Board of Governors' decisions, blaming a congressional mandate for preventing the implementation of modified Saturday delivery, I believe modified 6-day delivery met any congressional requirement. It still appears there are still a number of areas where the Postal Service can find further ways to improve its value to customers and improve its service and cut costs. And I look forward to hearing about these areas. Finally, I'd like to thank the witnesses for taking time to come and testify, and I'll now recognize the ranking member, Mr. Clay, for his opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for conducting this hearing, and let me also thank the witnesses for appearing before us today. Today's testimony will help us understand the important relationship between the Postal Service and its business partners. Within mailing industry, partners who are heavily dependent on a financial postal system, representing over 8 million jobs and accounting for almost 9% of our nation's gross domestic product. The mailing industry is a vast entity, dependent not only on a growing economy, but also on a healthy postal service. In a recent industry study found that a majority of the jobs within the mailing industry are dependent on the Postal Service's delivery network, whether it's delivering packages, printing advertisements, or providing supplies for those items. These are jobs that are important not only to the economy, but to our constituents. For its first quarter, the Postal Service reported a $1.3 billion loss as a result of declining mail volumes and required payments to pre-fund its retiree health benefits fund, a mandate that no other company must face. The Postal Service's recent announcements to modify its delivery schedule and to accelerate its network consolidation program continue to reflect the dire financial condition it faces. So clearly, postal reform legislation must remain a top priority for this Congress. At a time where unemployment remains high, we in Congress must be mindful that any reform measures must preserve jobs, not only within the Postal Service, but also within the industry as a whole. Finally, as we listen to the testimony of our witnesses, I hope that we are reminded that each passing day is a missed opportunity to pass postal reform legislation. Each passing day is another day that the Postal Service loses millions of dollars that it desperately needs. And each passing day is another day of uncertainty for the Postal Service, the mailing industry, and its millions of workers across America. So thank you, Mr. Chairman, for holding this hearing, and I look forward to the testimony of our witnesses. I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Clay. And without objection, members will have 7 days to submit opening statements for the record. And we'll now recognize our distinguished panel. Mr. Stephen Brandt is the president and publisher of the Greenville News in Greenville, South Carolina. Mrs. Joy, and I apologize if I butcher this name, Franskoviak, is that close enough? She's the Director of Postal Affairs and Distribution for Valpak. Ms. Meta Brophy is the Director of Procurement Operations for Consumer Reports. Mr. Carl Jansen is Vice President of Pharmacy Operations for CVS Caremark. Mr. Ken Garner is President and CEO of the Association of Marketing Service Providers. And Mr. Jerry Cerasale is Senior Vice President of Government Affairs for the Direct Marketing Association. Pursuant to the rules of this committee, all witnesses are to be sworn in before they testify. So if you guys will stand up with me and raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you are about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Let the record reflect that all witnesses have answered in the affirmative, and y'all may be seated. We've got a big panel today, and a big part of these hearings is both hearing your testimony and answering the questions that the members of the panel have. As a result of the size of our panel and consistent with our normal operating practices, we request that you summarize your testimony and limit it to 5 minutes. You'll have a timer in front of you. Green light means go, yellow light means speed up, and a red light means you need to wrap it on up. Again, you all will have 5 minutes. We have your entire written testimony before us. Hopefully, the members have already read it, but we would appreciate your summary, and we'll get started. So first off, we'll go with Mr. Brandt. Mr. Brandt, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Chairman Farenthold, Ranking Member Clay, and members of the subcommittee, I appreciate this opportunity to share my views on how the Postal Service is working with our business. The Greenville News is a daily newspaper serving the third largest metro area in South Carolina. The newspaper has been an important source of local news and information since 1874. Our newspaper uses all classes of mail, but by far our largest postal spend is in standard mail, which we use to distribute free weekly newspapers and pre-printed advertising to homes that do not subscribe to the newspaper. These are ads for grocery stores, discount retailers, furniture stores, and other home service companies. The News also delivers these pre-printed ads to our subscribers as inserts in the daily newspaper. We call this combined distribution to subscribers and non-subscribers our Total Market Coverage, or TMC program for advertisers. We mail 53,000 TMC pieces per week and have an annual postage bill of $850,000 for this class. Many other newspapers use the Postal Service in a similar manner. Daily newspapers collectively spend $500 million on standard mail postage for delivery of their non-subscriber TMC products. We depend on reliable and efficient service from the Postal Service to keep our advertising customers happy. The success of the midweek retail sales promotion depends on the timely delivery of the advertising piece. We receive excellent service from the hardworking men and women of the U.S. Postal Service. They help us serve our advertising clients and are a vital part of our local economy. Unfortunately, the business relationship with the Postal Service has become strained in recent years. Recent pricing initiatives are making our newspaper and many others around the country reconsider using the postal system for the delivery of TMC packages. Let me explain. Newspapers compete with direct mailers for the distribution of advertising inserts. Over the last decade, the Postal Service has followed a strategy of giving significantly more favorable saturation rates to our direct mail competitors than it has offered for our TMC products, which are delivered at high density rates. In 2007, the rate difference between what our TMC mailings paid and what a saturation mailer paid was 0.9 of a cent. In just 6 years, this rate difference widened to 2.6 cents per piece. This is a significant difference in a highly competitive market. To add insult to injury, the Postal Service last year entered into a negotiated services agreement with Velasas, the nation's largest saturation direct mailer and a direct competitor to local newspapers. This special deal provides Velasas with deep discounts off its already preferred saturation rates for the sole purpose of driving retail advertising out of newspaper Sunday editions. In response to these pricing decisions, many newspapers have moved TMC packages out of the mail. Those packages now go to private firms that deliver advertising inserts on the porch or in the driveway and provide verified delivery through GPS technology. Over the last 10 years, the Greenville News has moved approximately 50,000 pieces, or roughly $800,000 in annual postage, out of the mail into alternate delivery. The Postal Service has driven our business away at precisely the time that it had a golden opportunity to increase volume and revenues from newspapers. When a newspaper's circulation declines, we need to increase the number of TMC packages that we send to non-subscribers. Instead of designing rates and services to help us serve those non-subscriber customers and to increase more volume and revenue for the Postal Service, the Postal Service put forward pricing initiatives designed to divert advertisers from newspapers to saturation direct mailers. The unintended consequence of those decisions was to drive hundreds of millions of dollars out of the industry's business, out of the postal system. The Postal Service can get our business back if it stops taking sides in the marketplace competition. It should treat all mailers as valued and important customers, not some as favored and others as targets. Thank you for this opportunity to testify. I look forward to your questions.
And Mr. Brandt gives back 20 seconds. He set the bar high.
Well practiced.
We'll now go on to Ms. Joy Franskoviak, and I hope I got that right. Please pronounce it for us, would you please, ma'am?
Chairman Farenthold, Ranking Member Clay, members of the subcommittee. My name is Joy Franskoviak.
Okay.
And I am the Director of Distribution and Postal Affairs for Valpak Direct Marketing, located in Largo, Florida. Valpak is a part of Cox Enterprises, a leading communications, media, and automotive services company. Valpak operates through franchises in nearly every state and across Canada. Our franchisees are local independent businesses with employees who live and work in towns across America. They sell advertising that drives significant economic activity for small business, the lifeblood of the American economy. Each year, almost $500 million of our familiar blue envelopes carry some $20 billion money-saving offers exclusively using the Postal Service. Most mailers choose to use the mail as one of several available methods of advertising, shipping, or publishing. But Valpak's actual product is the mail that we send. That's why Valpak has been one of the most active mailers before the Postal Regulatory Commission, has participated on the Mailers Technical Advisory Committee, and has partnered with the Postal Service to create efficiencies and test new initiatives. Valpak also actively supported the Postal Service's move to increase efficiency by reducing the number of money-losing post offices and supporting the Postal Service's network realignment. Valpak was also one of the first large mailers to support 5-day delivery, and, along with the majority of Americans, we still support it. We, along with our advertisers, rely heavily on timely delivery across the country. The Postal Service rarely gets credit for what it is doing right, but currently the Postal Service delivers over 97% of our product on time. More than 150 postal facilities have been identified for closing as an essential cost-cutting strategy, and half of these closings affect where Valpak enters its mail. But the Postal Service has done an excellent job in working with mailers to reduce confusion and delay during this transition. To increase communication, last year Postal Service COO Megan Brandt reinstated one-day meetings in each postal area to ensure mailers are fully advised of upcoming developments. Every mailer had to go through painful downsizing a few years ago. We believe that Postmaster General Donohue has done a remarkable job of right-sizing his business to adjust to plummeting mail volume. We urge Congress to allow him to do what he needs to do to cut costs and survive financially. Please remember that mailers are footing the bill for every dollar of expense that Congress doesn't allow the Postal Service to cut. But Congress cannot force mailers to mail. And now I'd like to highlight some concerns that we believe must be addressed by Congress. First, in fiscal year 2012, the Postal Service allowed there to be 8 underwater products, where the revenues earned do not even cover their attributable costs. As an example, a serious problem exists with standard flats, which lost an amazing $528 million last year alone. The Postal Service could increase these prices significantly, but refuses to do so. The Commission repeatedly has found these pricing unlawful, but has refused to order meaningful price increases. It is a mystery to me why the Postal Service believes it can lose enormous amounts of money on products, as no business could ever operate that way. In fact, during the 6 years since PAEA was enacted, 8.1 of the $9 billion in operating losses were caused by underwater products. A step in the right direction was the ISO-ROS bill in the last Congress. It would have done much to remedy underwater products, and we urge that these remedial provisions be included in the new bill. When some products pay none of the overhead, the other products must pay all of it. The product that has the highest burden imposed on it is the one most used by Valpak, high-density and saturation letters. This product has a cost coverage of 221% and receives significant annual price increases, even though it is the only standard mail product whose costs have actually decreased. Postage rates are extremely important to our franchisees' viability, and postage rates impact the volume in which they mail. Lastly, the Postal Service believes that Congress has been pressuring it to pursue market-dominant negotiated service agreements, or NSAs. Yet its track record with such agreements has been terrible. One NSA is now on appeal, and another lost $4.3 million in its first year. But neither the Postal Service nor the Commission has been willing to terminate that agreement. The Commission has taken a hands-off approach to postal pricing on the theory Congress wanted the Commission to use only light-handed regulation. We cannot believe this is what Congress wanted, yet the Commission has ignored below-cost pricing of many products, abusively high prices for other products, and losses incurred by NSAs. We suggest Congress use this opportunity to remind the Commission that its role is to protect against abusive pricing by an agency with statutory requirements, rather than giving deference to the agency that it has been regulating. The Postal Service is the heart of a $1.3 trillion industry. It needs greater control over its cost, but greater oversight over its pricing. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Franskoviak. I grew up in a Polish ghetto on the south side of Chicago, and I was a gym leader, had to pronounce all those names.
So you know it used to have an SKI at the end of it.
Right. Well, I married a Polinsky. So thank you. Ms. Brophy, 5 minutes we recognize you for.
Thank you. Maida Brophy. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Thank you for inviting me here today to discuss Consumer Reports' relationship with the Postal Service. Consumer Reports serves to educate consumers by helping them navigate the countless and confusing options in today's marketplace that affect their every purchase decision in their everyday lives. Whether big-ticket purchases like cars or electronics, or everyday purchases like detergents or cereal, Consumer Reports provides consumers with everything they need to make the best decisions for themselves and their families. Consumer Reports has no commercial interests or affiliations and operates the largest independent consumer testing organization in the world, where hundreds of people work every day to test products, inform consumers of the results, and to protect consumer interests. Consumer Reports relies on subscription revenue to fund its product testing program, the sole goal of which is to inform and protect the U.S. consumer from unsafe products and misleading advertising in the marketplace. The marketing goal is to support this mission by continuing to grow the subscriber base in the most cost-effective manner possible. Traditional direct mail marketing is the largest source of new subscriber acquisition for both Consumer Reports magazine, published since 1936, its offshoot publication, ShopSmart magazine, as well as our health and money newsletters. Consumer Reports services nearly 4.5 million print and more than 3 million online subscribers. Our marketing strategy is to continually increase our reach to our target market with the most impactful and cost-effective stream of communications, offering the right product at the right price in the optimal mail slot, using the right promotion in the right distribution channel. To that end, our direct marketing campaigns are carefully woven multi-channel programs that include direct mail and email messages executed with precision to the appropriate prospects. The Postal Service is our largest outside vendor. Consumer Reports spends more than $32 million on postage in the United States each year. We primarily use first-class mail, nonprofit periodicals mail, and nonprofit standard mail. Consumer Reports relies on the Postal Service to deliver its marketing, subscriber, and transactional mail in a consistently reliable and timely way. Our reliance on the Postal Service goes back to our beginning. Postal Service delivery is critical to our business. Like most other content publishers, Consumer Reports is moving ahead with the digital-first, digital-fast entrepreneurial approach. To continue in direct mail, still the largest source of new subscribers, we pay careful attention to containing costs. Whereas CPI increases in postage are more predictable to budget, my department annually is charged with finding ways to mitigate additional costs. CPI increases are not something we can pass along to our customers in the cost of a subscription. In today's postal announcement, I heard that until legislative action takes place, the Postal Service has to pursue revenue ideas, including perhaps an exigent case. Such a scenario, especially in the absence of legislative reform, is very disturbing. It will hurt our business and drive our volume down. And it's mail volume that is at the heart of this situation. The Postal Service has excess capacity now. We are more than interested. We are invested in a viable, sustainable Postal Service. A significant portion of our customers and subscribers rely on mail to receive information from us. We support plans that reasonably and effectively improve the Postal Service's business and financial footing. So far, postal communications have been clear and timely, and we have been able to adjust logistics plans and delivery dates very well. We will adjust to changes as best we can in continued partnership with the Postal Service. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Ms. Brophy. Now, Mr. Jansen, you have 5 minutes we recognize you for.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the subcommittee, and thank you for holding this important hearing today and allowing CVS Caremark the opportunity to share our views on the United States Postal Service. My name is Carl Jansen. I am the Vice President of Logistics and Facility Engineering for CVS Caremark, a pharmacy innovation company located in Woonsocket, Rhode Island. I have the responsibility for the overall strategy in the areas dispensing technology, packaging, and transportation services for our products. Today, I would like to provide the committee with an overview of CVS Caremark's business, our relationship with the United States Postal Service, the benefits and cost savings to plan sponsors and beneficiaries of using mail-order pharmacy, and the opportunity for service improvements. Most people think of us as the nation's leading drugstore chain because we operate more than 7,400 CVS pharmacy stores in 44 states, the District of Columbia, and Puerto Rico. 75% of all Americans live within 3 miles of one of our stores in the markets where we operate. We are also a leading pharmacy benefit manager, or PBM, which administers prescription benefit plans for our clients, which include health plans, unions, and government groups. Our goal is to work with our clients to help them design prescription drug plans and options that best meet their members' needs and help plan sponsors drive down costs while improving health outcomes. Our PBM also provides beneficiaries with access to a network of more than 65,000 pharmacies in the U.S. We operate 19 on-site pharmacies, 43 specialty pharmacies, 3 mail-order pharmacies, not to mention CVS.com and Caremark.com websites, in addition to our MinuteClinic division, which operates more than 640 retail medical clinics. Our organization includes more than 75,000 pharmacists, pharmacy technicians, physician assistants, and nurse practitioners, and they are focused on delivering expert pharmacy care to our consumers. We are a leader in the variety of areas including retail clinics, specialty pharmacy, technology, and Medicare Part D. We are the 3rd largest provider of health benefits to eligible beneficiaries under the Federal Government's Medicare Part D program. Each year, CVS pharmacists serve more than 6 million beneficiaries and fill more than 275 million prescriptions under the Part D program. We also provide pharmacy benefits through the Federal Employees Health Benefits Plan. CVS Caremark's relationship with the United States Postal Service is one that dates back to 1985, when Caremark launched its first mail-order pharmacy offering. CVS Caremark relies on USPS for both its inbound and outbound mail services. Our mail-order pharmacies receive over 1 million prescriptions each week. On Saturdays alone, we receive approximately 100,000 prescriptions. Once a prescription is received, our pharmacies process, fill, and deliver the prescription within 5 business days on average, and this would include Saturdays. Our pharmacies are currently shipping on a 6-day-a-week schedule, Monday through Saturday, and in many situations ships prescriptions 7 days a week using USPS services. Saturday delivery to our customers is a critical piece of our overall service offering to our plan members. Each year, over 5 million packages, or 20% of all packages shipped, are delivered via USPS on Saturday alone. Having a consistent, reliable mail 6-day-a-week operation is critical for our business and for our clients' plan members, and we support the Postmaster General's proposal to maintain Saturday package delivery. More than 50 million prescriptions are dispensed through mail by Caremark. 100,000 orders are delivered for quality and safety and reviewed by registered pharmacists, and mail-order medications delivered through the USPS. CVS Caremark today works closely with our clients to design pharmacy benefit plans that ensure convenient, affordable access of medicine through mail delivery. In addition to cost savings, consumers receiving prescription medications for chronic conditions through a mail pharmacy are more likely to take them as prescribed by their doctors, according to a study published in the American Journal of Managed Care. Since almost half of all Americans or approximately 133 million live with at least one chronic disease, medication adherence should be a matter of great importance to policymakers, insurance plan sponsors, physicians, and patients. USPS plays a vital role in Caremark's mail pharmacy offering. Caremark has come to rely on the Postal Service cost efficiency, reliability, and predictability. We would like to see unnecessary regulatory burdens that are currently on USPS lifted to allow the Postal Service to better negotiate, ship, and reduce shipping rates so they can be more competitive with other shippers that they currently compete with. We appreciate the invitation and the relationship with USPS and the invitation to talk to you today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I see that Mr. Connolly from the full committee has joined us. And just make sure we stay appropriate with the rules, I'd like to request unanimous consent that Mr. Connolly be able to participate in this subcommittee hearing without objection. So ordered.
I thank the Chair.
We'll now go along and hear from Mr. Garner from the Association of Marketing Service Providers.
Mr. Chairman and members of the subcommittee, I want to thank you for the opportunity to testify today on behalf of the members of the Association of Marketing Service Providers, formerly the Mailing and Fulfillment Service Association. My name is Ken Garner. I serve as President and CEO of AMSP, an organization comprised of 450 member companies that provide mailing, fulfillment, marketing, and consulting services for a wide range of clients nationwide. AMSP is a trade association that for over 90 years has addressed the needs of primarily small businesses serving local customers. Our members are typical of those businesses identified as job creators. Our members' businesses are most sensitive to the economic circumstances impacting the hard copy message industry and the Postal Service in particular. AMSP is more than an association, and its members are more than just marketing service providers. We are a critically important part of an enormous U.S. supply chain that develops, markets, and sells products and ideas that help drive the nation's economy. This supply chain, which employs roughly 8 million people and contributes well over $1 trillion to the economy, depends on the distribution of our products to the ultimate customer. To a significant degree, that distribution depends on the U.S. Postal Service. AMSP members also participate in the exchange of information, technology, and ideas in this supply chain. We are members of the Coalition for a 21st Century Postal Service that includes members from every part of the U.S. print and product distribution channel and the Mailers Technical Advisory Committee to the Postal Service and many other related organizations. While there are many postal-related challenges about which we feel qualified to speak, we will confine our attention to the need for postal system infrastructure and operating cost reductions, since this is the most critical part of the relationship of our industry to the Postal Service. More specifically, I will focus today's comments on downsizing mail processing capabilities, mail delivery, and retail. This need not be a complicated discussion. The fact is that the Postal Service's current processing, delivery, and retail infrastructure was created in a different time with far greater volume and different customer expectations. At its peak only a few years ago, mail volume topped 212 billion pieces annually. The Postal Service's volume projection for its current fiscal year is just slightly over 153 billion pieces. Between 2005 and 2012, mail volume declined by 28.9%, with a corresponding revenue declination of 24.5%, even after 7 rate increases. While we believe printed content will remain an important part of communication in the future, we know that mail volume will never return to anything resembling the peak volume years, and continuing volume loss is probable. Quite simply, the current business model is not sustainable because the underlying financial and operations assumptions no longer exist. There are no $500 million revenue streams that are readily available to tap. Though the Postal Service's approach to product innovation, sales, and marketing needs dramatic improvement, it is a topic for another discussion at another time. While no enterprise can ensure its success through cost reduction strategies alone, and while it may be fair criticism that the Postal Service reacted too slowly to the crisis facing it, we believe that its current focus is well placed. In the past couple of years, it has initiated a series of strategies to right-size its processing, delivery, and retail components. Its network realignment strategy is well on the way to accomplishing its goal of closing or consolidating over 220 processing facilities. This will enable them to better utilize existing equipment investment and reduce labor expense. To this point, the Postal Service has executed this strategy in an effective and efficient manner with minimal negative impact on customers and business partners. The Postal Service has also worked to rationalize and optimize its retail infrastructure. There is a need to close post offices that are underutilized and represent expense that is no longer supported by customer demand. However, in the face of congressional opposition, USPS leadership revised its approach and created its POST initiative that takes a somewhat softer but less effective approach. Rather than closing about 3,700 underutilized post offices, the POST plan seeks to align operating hours with current customer activity at about 13,000 post offices nationwide. Even this plan has met community resistance, but given the availability of alternative forms of access, the perpetuation of traditional brick-and-mortar USPS-operated retail outlets is an outdated and inefficient use of resources to meet ever-increasing customer demand. Operational and logistical management represent a core competency of the current Postal Service leadership team. They have demonstrated the ability to make tough decisions and, when allowed, to execute their strategies with a high degree of competency. While some level of oversight is appropriate and necessary, an excessive and overbearing approach is not productive and only serves to waste precious time in a critical turnaround situation. Of course, these infrastructure and cost reductions include related consequences. All stakeholders must be prepared to participate in this process. We all must be prepared to recalibrate our expectations. The central challenge facing the Postal Service is whether the Congress and citizens of the country will allow the Postal Service to make the necessary changes to survive. With 80% of the costs of Postal Service tied to personnel, all cost reductions must include a discussion about the costs associated with labor. In conclusion, the stakes are high and the consequences are significant. Time is not on our side. We need strong, decisive leadership that operates with a sense of purpose and urgency. This leadership must derive from an unprecedented level of collaboration by all stakeholders, including the leaders of the Postal Service, the industry supply chain, postal labor, and legislative oversight bodies, and Congress. Success will depend on forward-thinking, open-mindedness, and a willingness to set aside dated perspectives. We need a commitment to action at the Association of Marketing Service Provider. We are prepared to make this commitment, and I call on other leaders to join us in forging an effective solution. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And the staff pointed out that Mr. Davis also needs to be UC'd in. You've been on this subcommittee so long, we'd all just assumed you were still on it. So at this point, I'd like to ask unanimous consent as well for Mr. Davis to participate in this hearing. Without objection, so ordered. We'll now move on to Mr. Jerry Cerasale. He's the Senior Vice President of Government Affairs for the Direct Marketing Association. You're recognized for 5 minutes, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, members of the subcommittee, and members of the full committee. It's a pleasure to be here and speak to you. Direct Marketing Association is an association of mailers and suppliers, and we represent probably 80 to 85% of the revenue the Postal Service receives. As we look at the Postal Service, Americans and American business particularly are spending $65 billion a year in postage. That is, in fact, the Postal Service is providing something that's necessary to American business. And you've heard from some of my colleagues here on how it's important the Postal Service is for their companies. So it is a very important entity, and this is a very important issue. A couple of more examples. Disabled American Veterans, great member of DMAs, receives 85% of its revenue to help disabled American veterans from direct mail campaigns. And they are typical for nonprofit DMA members, that 80 to 85% of their revenue comes from direct mail campaigns. So the Postal Service is very, very important. In essence, as we look at this, the unfortunate of the world depend on the U.S. mail to get those revenues to help them. But it's not just nonprofits that is important. Another example that I'll give you are catalogs. People think in e-commerce that paper catalogs are no longer important. They're important for our members to get new customers, but every single catalog, when people order online, over half the people ordering online have the catalog sitting in front of them. So the mail is important for that segment of our membership. Retail sales. There's a sale at the brick-and-mortar store, and the Postal Service delivers that advertisement to the home on time so that customers will go to those brick-and-mortar stores. It's important for them as well to have the Postal Service. And the Postal Service does deliver on time most of the time, and the complaints we receive, the Postal Service has been very, very, very responsive to trying to look at errors and problems in their delivery system. They've been much more willing recently to meet with mailers, and we congratulate them for that. But as you look at all those examples, all of the use of the mail depends upon the return on investment. How much do I spend for postage? What is the response rate that I receive? And all of our members look at that return on investment across the board for all the communications channels that are open for them. And for many of them, the mail is still a very, very important communication channel. But we all know the Postal Service cannot continue to lose $25 million a day. So what can they do? Our hope is that they will try and grow volume and try and work with them. But you cannot grow volume by raising postage rates. Postage increases and increases in mail preparation costs, we put regulations down, hurt mail volume in two distinct ways. One, the revenue budget, the postal budgets are exhausted with less volume, and that volume is most likely lost is prospect volume, the engine to try and grow those businesses. And second, the return on investment drops. And when that happens, alternatives become more and more advantageous. So our hope is that the Postal Service can use the sales force. Valpak has a sales force. Others have sales forces out there. And if they get volume for their businesses, it grows postal volume. So let's work together and try and have the Postal Service leverage those sales forces. We think the Postal Service should be more aggressive with negotiated service agreements across classes of mail to try and keep volume within the Postal Service. Finally, cutting expenses. The Postal Service has excess capacity. They are working well to reduce that excess capacity. They have to work faster. You can't raise rates and ask mailers to pay for excess capacity. It's not going to work. It's going to hurt mail volume. It's going to hurt the Postal Service, and it's going to hurt the mail industry. So they have to move more rapidly with that. And I appreciate this time and look forward to your questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We appreciate everyone's testimony here. At this point, we had also invited testimony from eBay. Mr. Carl Gish was unable to attend, and he did submit written testimony without objection. I would like to include that into the record. Without objection, so ordered. But for eBay, I wouldn't have this lovely tie. Actually, but for a lot of people on this panel, my life would be very different. I paw through the Valpak for the pizza coupons. I paw through my newspaper for the CVS coupons. So it's a very interesting panel that I think affects all postal customers' lives as well. At this point, I want to begin my questioning with something that's really kind of topical in the news today. We're seeing a pullback now from the Postal Service saying they're going to stay with full 6-day delivery. What I do want to, I know the gentleman from CVS pointed out they were happy with just packages being delivered. That met their business needs. But I would like to go down and ask the panel, as part of their business, do they see a huge negative effect with the proposal that was before us to just deliver packages and priority mail and post office boxes on Saturday? And if y'all could just answer quickly, because I've got quite a few questions. We'll start with Mr. Brandt.
Mr. Chairman, we in the newspaper industry have experienced many of the challenges that the Postal Service is facing. We've had multiple responses to that, but one has been to reduce our costs significantly. And so my view, and the one expressed in editorials in my newspaper, is that that was a perfectly legitimate option available to the Post Office for reducing its costs.
Yeah, about 71% of surveyed folks agreed with you on that. Mrs. Franskowiak, am I getting closer on that name?
Getting closer.
I'm a radio guy. I should be able to do this.
Franskoviak. We actually also mail into Canada. We have franchisees located up there where they have a 5-day delivery model currently. So we've been used to that for quite some time. So we've been very supportive of the Postal Service. At this point, we kind of look at it as maybe a luxury if they were able to continue Saturday. It wouldn't be our preference if they could afford it, to eliminate it. But we've had the experience in Canada.
Ms. Brophy?
We understand that the move to eliminate the 6-day of home delivery is another initiative to cut costs, and we have said right along that we will adjust.
Okay, great. And Mr. Jansen?
Yes, sir. As I stated, we support.
I'm butchering the names today. I apologize.
That's right. We supported the initiative of moving to a 5-day for first class and keeping the parcel for 6 days.
Great. And Mr. Garner?
Our association was the first to announce its support of the PMG's intent to move to 5-day, not because we were excited about it, but because we believe that everybody has to make some concessions in this. Everybody has to have some skin in the game, and that was one of the concessions we were prepared to make.
All right. Thank you. And Mr. Cerasale?
Yes. Mine's the name that usually gets butchered, and you do it correctly, so applaud to that anyway. But
at least one win today.
You have a great win today. DMA can't take a position. Our association is split. Our membership is split. But we all agree that you should cut as much as you can before you cut service and as a last resort there. But some of my members all of my members will have to adjust if Saturday delivery goes. Some be easier than others. But as a last resort, we support it as a last resort because we need the Postal Service to stay financially viable.
Thank you very much. I'm going to go back to Mr. Brandt as well. You mentioned that the Postal Service is negotiating a sweetheart deal with some of your competitors for delivery, a lower rate for bringing in new customers. I know my local newspaper, the Corpus Christi Caller-Times, brought that to my attention, and we sent a letter to the Postal Service about it. Do you feel like some of the customers that are using this service are actually new postal customers, or are they customers that were using the Postal Service to begin with and are just switching providers to get a better deal?
Mr. Chairman, first of all, I appreciate your signing and perhaps even initiating that letter. That was very helpful. Our industry association tracks activity related to the negotiated services agreement with Velasas, which was targeted at Sunday inserts at newspapers. There's apparently not been, at this point, an actual conversion of a preprint delivered by newspapers to the new program. So at the moment, it's netted nothing for the Postal Service. However, there is evidence and data that it's being used by agencies that place newspaper inserts to flog newspapers in rate negotiations to reduce the rates that preprint advertisers are paying for the inserts that they put into newspapers.
All right. Well, I see my time has expired, so I'm going to lead by example and move along. If we have time for a second round of questioning, I do have a couple more if they don't get asked by other members. At this point, I will recognize Mr. Clay for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I certainly will observe the 5-minute time limit. In the 112th Congress, both Chairman Issa's bill and the Senate bill addressed underwater or underpriced postal products through a provision that mandated increasing prices of market-dominant classes, products, or types of mail that did not contribute to 100% of their indirect or direct cost. Joy, let me begin with you, and I will not try to tackle your last name. But in your testimony, you mentioned that the Postal Service allowed 8 products to remain underwater, costing the Postal Service millions of dollars. Do you think that the House and Senate provisions on this issue would address the problem, and do you think that this provision should be included in any future reform package?
Thank you. Yes, sir, we believe that the Postal Service cannot afford to continue losing, at this point, billions of dollars on products that don't cover their cost. As a private business, we certainly wouldn't probably be very profitable if we had a bunch of products that didn't cover their costs, let alone, contribute towards overhead. So, we don't think that it needs to be an immediate jump and get them maybe there in 1 year or even 2 years, but they should start to move in that direction and develop a plan that everybody can, move towards.
Thank you for your response. And Mr. Brandt, you mentioned that the high-density rate prices have incrementally increased over time at a higher rate than saturation rates. Has this caused you or any of the other newspapers in your association to scale back the amount of mail you enter into the system at the high-density rate?
Congressman Clay, the expanding differential between saturation rates paid by direct mailers and high-density rates paid by newspapers has resulted in Greenville in a transfer of 50,000 pieces per week from the mail to alternate delivery. And our industry association estimates that $300 million has migrated from the postal system to private alternate delivery forces as a result of what we view as an ill-advised pricing action by the Postal Service.
And Mr. Brandt, how do those costs, how do they come out? Is it more expensive to use the private company, or is it more expensive to stay, or is it less expensive to be with the Postal Service?
The private or proprietary, in our case, we have our own alternate delivery force in Greenville. The proprietary or private services are 25 to 50% less expensive than the Postal Service.
At this time? It could change?
Yes, sir.
All right. Okay, thank you for that response. And do you think that if this issue was addressed in postal reform language, that it would cause you and other newspapers to use the Postal Service more?
Mr. Congressman, the newspaper industry values the Postal Service, and even though it's more expensive, many deliveries remain in the Postal Service because our preprint advertising clients value them. So if the differential were scaled back, I think there is every reason to believe that postal volume would increase as a result.
Thank you for the.
My colleague yield.
I only got a few.
My colleague. Would my colleague yield?
I got one more.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were
one more. Mr. Cerasale, one nonprofit organization within your association is the Disabled American Veterans. Could you discuss how this organization would be affected if nonprofit mailing rates were increased?
Sure. As I said, the return on investment is the major driver, but they have a postal or a mailing budget, not just for postage, but to prepare the direct appeals. And if postage rates go up, they will send out less pieces of mail. They will send it to, the lower response rate that they think, but they will receive fewer dollars coming in to help disabled American veterans. So it's just a simple dollar and cents issue. The mailing budget is used, and when it's all used up, they stop mailing, and if they mail less, their response, they get less money back.
Thank you, and I'm finished.
Thank you very much, Mr. Clay. We'll now recognize Mr. Walberg for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And being a father that just put my daughter on a plane to go back to Uganda, where she's lived and worked for 6 years, and this time transporting with her by air 6 large containers, because you can't mail to Uganda and expect that it gets there safe, sound, or even gets there. And so to have a panel in front of us that is giving us ideas on how to work to make sure that a Postal Service, which provides us a really excellent service that we can trust. You send a check or you send a package, it arrives, sometimes a little bit beat up, but what do you expect? It's worse on the airplanes. It's good that we have this opportunity. Ms. Brophy, for your magazines, can you estimate what share of the cost is postage?
It's an equation that, excuse me, there are a number of different ways that you could look at that. I couldn't tell you for sure unless I knew exactly what we were including. It's a significant portion of a direct mail.
So a significant portion of it.
Significant.
I would assume because of that you've probably looked at other possibilities for delivering your magazines or mailings. What has kept you with the Postal Service?
Most of our customers, a great number of our customers, rely on getting that information. They like getting the print information. Direct mail is also the largest acquisition source, and more than half of our revenue still comes from direct mail acquisition. So direct mail campaigns are vitally important to the mission and to the budget. We have a very strong digital presence. ConsumerReports.org is one of the largest paid sites on the web. At any given time, depending on how much of an expense postal happens to be in that equation, we would probably divert much more of our resources to figuring out and conquering how to pursue acquisitions online.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Garner, in your testimony you highlight the major actions that the Postal Service has taken to begin right-sizing its infrastructure. Could you expand why that right-sizing is so important to mailers?
Well, I think it's a very basic principle here in terms of an infrastructure that exists now that can't support itself. It's not sustainable. As we've all been made aware here, the financial consequence of having the cost of an infrastructure that far exceeds the demand for it is it's penalizing all of us, and it puts all of what we do here at serious risk. So first and foremost, I think as a strategy, we need to get the Postal Service's infrastructure and costs in line with the volume and the revenue it receives.
In your full testimony, you touched on the larger mailing industry and the effect the electronic diversion and downturn in mail volume has had on the industry as a whole. If you could you explain for us what have been some of the differences between how the UPS, or excuse me, the United Postal Service has impacted or worked to deal with that, respond to that crisis, I think is a better question, respond to that crisis, how they've responded in some ways in the private sector better than they have done with the U.S. Postal Service?
Well, I'll take a swing at it. But I think one of the things about UPS and FedEx is they're not encumbered by some of the same requirements that the Postal Service is. They don't have a thing called the universal service obligation. They don't have to deliver mail every day to every residence. In fact, the Postal Service does a lot of that work on behalf of FedEx and UPS. So as commercial businesses, I think they have more latitude, more freedom to execute the kinds of cost reduction, infrastructure reduction strategies that are available to them. So I think they have a distinct advantage in that area.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Jansen, in your testimony you mentioned the important role of cost efficiency in your decision to use the United States Postal Service. How has the continual increase in the cost of postage affected your business over the past few years?
From a history perspective, back in the 80s when we first started the program for mail-order prescriptions, everything went 100% UPS. FedEx didn't exist back then. The pressure on the industry, like all industries, is to continue to look for cost savings. And we've moved to the postal system, and as they upgraded their delivery system for packages, it has been very opportunistic for everyone to increase that volume. As I said, over 90% of the medicine, medication that we ship today on the maintenance side for maintenance products goes to the postal system. As we continue to have these price increases, obviously that affects our business as well and our pricing model, and we have less ability to pass that savings on to our clients and our constituents or our beneficiaries that are using our products. So we still have a very good differential today between the postal system and UPS, but it's getting closer all the time, for example.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Thank you very much. We're now up on the other side of the aisle to the gentlelady that has the shortest commute of anybody in Congress to their home district, the gentlelady from the District of Columbia, Ms. Norton.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. 9 blocks. First, let me ask a threshold question. We've not gotten anywhere, and if we do not pass a postal bill, a lot of the testimony we're hearing today may be quite moot. We've done nothing on this side of the House of the Congress, but last year I note that the Senate actually passed a Postal Service reform bill. 2/3 of the Senators voting for it, really bipartisan bill. Could I ask where each of you stand on the Senate bill? Mr. Brandt, why don't you start?
Congresswoman Norton, I'm not familiar with the content of the bill, and therefore I can't comment on it.
Our preference, I think, from a operational perspective, we preferred a lot of the language that was in the proposed House bill that was passed out of the subcommittee, because we didn't feel that the Senate bill really went after a lot of the fundamental issues of the Postal Service. It related a lot about RHBF and some of the other things that, while they are things that are impacting the Postal Service, they really need to have the ability to right-size their business model and do some of these changes that we feel need to incur.
We supported the Senate bill. There are very many elements in the House bill that we were also in favor of.
Thank you. Mr. Jansen.
Congresswoman, I am not close enough to understand all the details of that bill to comment.
Mr. Garner.
We did support the Senate bill, but similar to my colleague, Ms. Franskoviak, we wish it would have been a bit more aggressive in terms of its approach to cost reduction.
Mr. Cerasale.
We supported the bill. We think that postal reform needs to get moving, so we supported the Senate bill and hope that they pass something similar to get things started again.
Well, I mean, I appreciate just that understanding of where people would have been willing to start. And obviously, the House and the Senate are not going to agree on everything, and that's why if somebody doesn't get it started, it doesn't happen. So I think that they did make a start, and I do believe this is the year that if we don't do it, the Postal Service, this will be the 2nd or 3rd year of defaulting on its health benefits prepayments. It's out of cash. In November, it will owe $1.3 billion just for workman's compensation, no cash. In November, it will owe $5.5 billion in prepaid benefits, health benefits, at the end of this fiscal year. This is folly. We're sitting here talking about important matter, but I think there are root problems here. I was interested in how you viewed the Postal Service. Mr. Brandt indicated, that something like 25% of your business had been moved to private, private deliverers. Cerasale, I hope I'm pronouncing your name right.
Cerasale, it's okay.
All right. I like the Italian pronunciation better. All right. Had been moved. You indicated that the Postal Service, was timely and reliable. I'm sure if there are any Postal Service people here, they're glad to hear someone say such good things about them. By the way, there was a recent survey done of, quote, government agencies, and found the Postal Service to be the most trusted by the American people, and it's not even a government agency. Let me ask you, though, this is my pet peeve. In 1971, the Congress spun off the Postal Service to be a private business, to be like you who are sitting here at this table, but it has never treated it like a private business. I mean, the health benefits are only one example, that they have to prepay in a way that no Federal agency does, for example. And the reason for that, very frankly, is only because it makes our deficit look better. Doesn't have anything to do with them. It's that if they didn't put their funds, trust funds, then our deficit would look like it really is. Now, let me ask you, though, about treating the Postal Service as a private business. The Postal Service has an unparalleled infrastructure in transportation and delivery like nobody else. But it cannot at the moment even engage with non-Postal Service matters like products or the Internet, other kinds of things that its infrastructure, if any private sector had it, would be now used in a dozen ways. Do you think that today's Postal Service should be allowed to use that infrastructure to take full advantage of that infrastructure by not being required to stick only to what is a very narrow set of products and services related to the Postal Service itself? I'd like to hear what each of you who are in private business have to say about that. Mr. Brandt.
Congresswoman Norton, I agree with you on the scope and magnitude of the challenge that the Postal Service is facing. I think that when we talk about spinning it off and giving it true independence as a business, an issue that is part and parcel of that has to do with the fact that the Postal Service is both an umpire and a player in some of the arenas where it operates, and I think that would have to be taken into account if it were spun off as an independent business.
Ms. Frankenwood?
We generally feel that the Postal Service, what they are really good at, to your point, is delivering the mail and the size of their network and utilizing their infrastructure. We would support anything that they could do that falls within their specialty. A lot of foreign posts get into banking and insurance and different things like that. We don't think that that's something that the Postal Service should go after, but anything that can enhance their strengths, we would support.
Brophy?
I would leave it up to other experts to decide whether or not the Postal Service should pursue other avenues. We are really much more interested in what's in front of us immediately, and that they continue to work on organizational changes that make them financially sound.
I'm just trying to allow them to grow like any business would like to grow. Mr. Jansen?
I also share your pet peeve, by the way, in terms of either we fund it as an organization, as part of the government, if we feel that's the right way to go, or we allow it to be an independent business from a regulatory perspective. So today we're kind of in that middle ground. As to your comment or your question, I would support them looking for other avenues for revenue generation to fill that capacity. It's been discussed by a number of the constituents here.
Mr. Garner?
I believe that product innovation, service innovation is not a core competency that the Postal Service currently has. I think industry could help a great deal in that area. But I would also caution against kind of a free rein here, in the sense that they are in a position to perhaps in some cases inappropriately leverage their size and their reach. And so there needs to be a sensitivity to private business and competition in those areas, but there is no question about the fact that they need to be much better at product and service innovation.
I agree with Mr. Garner that they need to be much better in product-service integration. I think that I've testified before that the Postal Service should not reinvent the wheel in looking at products. They should try and look to partner with the private sector. If, in fact, the private sector is producing something, they don't have to reinvent it and do it. They can work with them together. And I think that that's an area the Postal Service should be allowed to more aggressively pursue.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I note that they've now called votes in the House. This is going to be a rather lengthy series of votes. They're saying that we will probably not walk off the floor. Yep. So we're going to not walk off the floor until 4:15. So what we're going to do, we have time to get to the votes by probably taking 2 more rounds of questions if they stick to 5 minutes, and then we will recess. If any of our witnesses have to leave to catch a plane or whatever, we'll excuse them, but we will reconvene immediately after the votes for any other members who have questions with any of our panel who can stay. So at this point, in order to get a couple more sets of questions in, we'll recognize the gentleman from Georgia for a quick 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's going to be quicker than 5 minutes. I think one of the things is said here, and we can rehash a lot of what's been said. The Postal Service is a vital function that is needed. It's something that we need. It provides a service that no one else is going to pick up. UPS, FedEx, nobody else is going to pick up a lot of what they do. And we've got to fix that. But we've also got to acknowledge that there are a lot of problems. And this is what we've had in the last 2 days over here. And one of the things, we talk about the pre-funding mandate, and that's causing all the problems. There's an issue there, but you had $9.9 billion in losses on top of the pre-funding. Okay? There's just an inherent problematic model here. And then when I sit here and listen today, about the agreements the NSA's agreed where you're losing money, you're giving preferential treatment. I have a real problem with the Postal Service picking winners and losers. I have a problem with any side of that. But I do have one quick question, and then I'm going to reserve back, and I'm going to just say joy. Not even going to attempt. My North Georgia would just mutilate it. So it's my understanding, though, that products such as Valpak pay a higher percentage of basically the cost relative to the cost of the Postal Service. Is that true? So basically you're a profit. You pay more than what is needed to deliver. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. We pay approximately 220% of our costs. So we're paying quite a bit to help offset some of the products that aren't paying even 100% of their costs.
Okay. And when I hear that and seeing how this model is not working, it really bothers me in the sense, and I'm all for doing what we can because it is a vital service, and even the others, UPS, FedEx, and others I have talked to, want a strong relationship with the Post Office like they already have. I think what concerns me, though, in that question and with other things going on, is that we're simply, again, have just a flawed business model here. It's a flawed model that is not working to support newspapers, to support others, where you have this kind of rate structure that basically says we'll make here and not make here, when you can actually do something about it. I look forward to dealing with the chairman and the ranking member and others on this subcommittee as we move forward, and that we do need to address this. This is not something we need to duck. It's something we need to move forward on. And is it going to be easy? No. But we have to do it, and I appreciate all of your attendance today. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
And I appreciate your generosity with your time. We'll now recognize Mr. Davis for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I certainly appreciate you giving me the opportunity to participate. I think I've been on this committee so long until I forget that I'm not still a member of it. There are many members of Congress, including some people on this committee, who are concerned that senior citizens and veterans who receive their prescriptions by mail would be adversely affected by the Postal Service's decision to reduce its delivery schedule. The Postal Service has stated that package delivery will occur on Saturdays. However, many of the prescriptions that our seniors and veterans receive are not classified as packages. Mr. Jansen, you mentioned how important Saturdays are to your operation. As a provider of mail-ordered prescriptions for Federal employees, retirees, and their dependents, has the Postal Service reached out to your company to explain its plan to implement this measure or address the issue of delivery to our seniors and veterans?
Congressman, they have reached out, and we've talked to our account representatives. And right now, all of our product that we ship today is either a Parcel Select or a Parcel Select Lightweight. It would be included in their Saturday delivery schedule.
Do you think that additional costs will be incurred by your company that you in turn would pass on to the consumer, some of whom are already on fixed incomes or are already contending with high prescription costs?
At this point, are you suggesting if they stopped Saturday deliveries?
Yeah.
It would impact our ability to maintain our current margins. It has not been decided at this point whether that cost would be passed on to our clients, who are the payers that tie back into our members from a health plan perspective, unions and government organizations.
So you think it would adversely affect your operation vis-a-vis your clients?
Correct. If we had to continue to ship for delivery on Saturday, but there's also as I touched on from an adherence perspective, is that then we have one less day where they would have deliveries if we chose not to ship for delivery on Saturday.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Chairman, I thank you again for the opportunity to participate, and I certainly thank all of the witnesses for coming to share with us.
Well, since our two previous questioners were so rapid, we probably can still make our votes by letting Mr. Conley go for 5 minutes. And you're recognized, sir.
I thank the Chair, and I thank you for your courtesy in allowing me to participate. All of you were asked by the Chairman, the question about the reasonableness of going from 6 to 5 days. But might you have a different answer if the question were phrased differently? If, for example, you knew that the biggest cost item that we have not dealt with in the House bill, we did in the Senate bill that you were not familiar with, Mr. Brandt, is the prepayment requirement, an onus put on no other entity on the planet but the United States Congress except the U.S. Postal Service that costs it between $5 and $6 billion a year right now. You might have answered differently, might you not, if I had said that's the choice. The choice is cost cutting from 6 to 5, holding in advance what revenue loss you might have, and or dealing with the prepayment problem, which is the big elephant in the room, except we didn't deal with it here in the House. Might your answer have been different, Mr. Brandt, if I had phrased it that way?
Congressman Conley, my understanding is the deficit for the Postal Service last year was $15.9 billion. My understanding is that the prepayment on retiree health care benefits is $5.5. Clearly, that leaves more work to be done. I understand that the elimination of Saturday delivery other than parcels would save an additional $2 billion.
Can I stop you there, Mr. Brandt?
Yes, sir.
So far, you're accurate in the retelling. But I assume, being a newspaper man, you don't just accept those numbers uncritically. For example, let's take this so-called $2 billion savings from 6 to 5 days a week. Are you aware of the fact that the Postal Regulatory Commission actually examined that number and said it overstates the savings by $1.4 billion and understates the revenue loss by $0.4 billion? Might that have changed your editorial opinion about going from 6 to 5?
Congressman Conley, our editorial was really addressing a more general issue, and that is the necessity to reduce costs and or increase revenues in order to sustain the viability of the Postal Service into the future. As part of that, as a subset of that editorial view, we endorsed the idea that Saturday delivery be on the table.
Fair enough. But I would just,
and my answer would not have changed.
No. I would just say to you, however, especially in the newspaper business, it seems to me we can't accept things uncritically. It has to be examined. For example, there was a study 2 years ago that the Postmaster General commissioned, not an outside study, and they deep-sixed it because it found that, yeah, all these reforms to save money actually cost money and lost revenue, over $5.2 billion. And they buried the study rather than have it be available to the public. I assume you were aware of that, which calls into question the efficacy of some of the so-called reforms. And Mr. Garner, you really emphasize cut, cut, cut. But don't we need to emphasize new revenue opportunities? Let me give you one simple example. In terms of parcel service delivery, the Federal business alone for the Federal customer was $342.6 million in 2011, and $336.9 million the year later. The Postal Service share of that was $1.2 million in 2011 and $4.8 million in 2012. This is Federal business. Would you at least agree that in addition to spending cuts, there are revenue opportunities that we're not really exploring?
I would absolutely agree with you.
Okay. Because that's what bothers me. I think we need a new business model. And Mr. Cerasale, you touched on it. If you look at Europe, they're exploiting that business model, and it's a fairly significant chunk of their revenue, and it's viable. But our 2006 legislation around here actually precludes the Postal Service from really examining that. Why, I don't know, but it seems to me we're the ones who put a real onus on the ability of the Postal Office to respond by creating a more nimble business model, including cuts, including new revenue opportunities, including expansion into areas heretofore unexplored or limited. And I would hope that as we do that, we do it within the law. Because one of the other things, I end on this note, that didn't get said about the postal decision to go from 6 to 5 is it was frankly an extra legal decision. The Postmaster General clearly, on its face, he did not have that authority. That was so opined by the GAO and confirmed today by the Postal Board of Governors, even though they disagree with the congressional intent. But the statute is a statute. We all have to operate within the law. Thank you.
Mr. Connolly and I may disagree with the intent of that statute. I've been informed by the minority staff that since Mr. Connolly has gotten his questions, the remainder of the members of the minority would not be able to get back after votes. We've completed our questioning on our side. I had a couple of other questions that I wanted to direct to the panel in general, and that was just a general comment with respect to the customer service you've received from the Postal Service. And I did have a question for Mr. Brandt as well about the different effectiveness of using the post office for delivery of your products versus your door hangers. Because I need to get over and vote as well, if you guys would just fire off a quick letter to the committee with the answers to those questions to supplement your written testimony, we'll adjourn this and we'll all go about our business. I would like to thank each member of the panel as well as members of the subcommittee for participating in this. I think we gained some valuable insight as we move forward with postal reform. So with that, thank you very much, and the committee or subcommittee stands adjourned.
Thank you.